Should you try older games? There's this myth that nostalgia is the only reason why people play older games. And that is not true. In fact, if you look at some of the Steam Deck threads, if you look at some of the, just some of the threads, like, like for like the older, like PS2 or PS1 subreddits or other, just maybe not even just those, like JRPG subreddit or just other communities where there's a gathering of people who play games, you will see some people say, yeah, I went back and started playing some of these older games now that I got a Steam Deck. I put up some emulation, and now I'm playing some of these games I never played before, because I never played a PS2, I never played a PS1, I never played some of these older games. But they had fun and really enjoyed some of the games and beat some of the games. And that's something that is not indicative of a nostalgia problem being the reason why people go back and play those games, because these people never played them before. What it means is there are older games that at one time were the best of that era. It'd be like saying in 10, 15 years from now, it's no longer worth playing Elden Ring or Baldur's Gate 3 because there's newer games. There's some clunkiness or some issues with Baldur's Gate 3 or maybe Elden Ring that stops it from being a good game, and we fixed it in current year. And the reality is that's not necessarily the case. One such game that I see more people go back and play, and have been seeing that for like 10, 15 years now, even though I think when did Chrono Trigger release originally? Was it like the 80s or was it like the 90s? It was one of those things. So 2010, 2015, 2025, you have all these years where people are going back and playing Chrono Trigger and having fun. They say, it was really good. The music was immersive. It was enjoyable. The gameplay was fun. The story was, pretty good. I liked the whole timeline shtick that they had going on. It just overall was a really fun and immersive gameplay loop. Or a game, I should say. Not loop, because it's not like a... Yeah. I guess you could kind of say that. But yeah, anywho, really solid game. And that's not the only game people have been saying they've gone back and playing, People don't realize how old the PS2 is. It's over 20 years old at this point. So if you think about the PS2 and the fact that it's over 20 years old, it's old enough to drink. So when you think about that, people are going back and playing those games and having a blast. And someone said, one of the best things about going back and playing some of these older games, I don't have to worry about microtransactions. Which, is fair. It's true, but depending on where you get your games, or what type of games you buy, you don't necessarily have to worry about microtransactions there either. Stardew Valley doesn't have a bunch of microtransactions. Terraria doesn't have a bunch of microtransactions. So there are games coming out. Of course, those two games are relatively old, but you get where I'm saying. There are games coming out nowadays that don't have a ton of microtransactions you buy and play, like Palworld, still in early access, doesn't have a bunch of microtransactions. Or if they are, they're not ham-fisted into your face to where I see it all the time. It's been a while since I looked at the store page, so maybe they've added a couple, like, buy the soundtrack here type things or something like that. Or if you want to support, which, to be honest, I don't think they, with how many they sold, I don't think they really need that support, unless the lawsuits really get bad. But yeah, essentially, should you try older games? Yes, but there's a caveat. Go in there with the expectations, while you are playing good games of that era, there can be issues. Like, let's take Final Fantasy VII, the original. It's a great game. I really like it. A lot of other people really like it. But some of the models are kind of clunky. Some of the way they did the transitions from screen to screen can be a little clunky. There can be issues with said game. But if that doesn't bother you, or you're able to overlook that, you are in for a really solid treat. Obviously, it also depends on what version of the game you're playing. You know, I believe the Switch version has like a speed up function or something like that. So there was something I think that the Switch version had that the other versions didn't. Last I checked, maybe they changed it. Maybe the other versions got it. But yeah, there's just really good ways to play older games, especially now that a lot of them are being remastered or remade to play. And one such example is the game on screen, Age of Mythology Retold. They took what a lot of people who played the previous Age of Mythology or the remaster, which is called Age of Mythology Extended Edition, they took it and they learned from it. Like, one of the biggest complaints about the God Powers is you couldn't reuse them. Well, they developed a really good system that allows you to reuse them. Titans, they could never be rebuilt. So if you built one and lost it, well, guess what? You're out of luck. Here, there are ways to rebuild the Titan. Now, granted, it does take a lot of favor in order to rebuild them, but you can do so. And that's the thing. There are costs, and there's, it allows people who like to play, casually, or, just, don't really want to focus on like competitive play and beating the opponent, before you sometimes even get to the third or fourth age. It allows them to really take, to really enjoy the experience and do things that they kind of wish they could do in the other ones. And other remasters and remakes have been doing it as well. The Final Fantasy Pixel remasters added speed up functions, adjusting the enemy encounters, adjusting how much experience you get, like the experience rates, adjusting like how much of gold or money you earn in battles, like the rates. And it's like all that really good additional functions that allowed for people to get through the games a lot quicker and reduce the amount of grinding some of those games might take. So, yeah. Overall, try it, but go in there with the expectations that while the games are great, don't expect perfect games. Those are rare, even for the older eras of video games.